And I would like to introduce to you Paula Prober. She's a psychotherapist, a consultant and blogger, and author. She'll tell you a little bit about her books. She's in private practice based in Eugene, Oregon. And for the past 30 plus years, her clients have been intellectually and creatively gifted adults and parents of gifted children. Along with counseling in Oregon, she consults internationally with these individuals. And Paula has been a teacher of gifted children and presenter at universities and webinars and podcasts, conferences. She's written many articles on giftedness, places like Psychotherapy Networker, Advanced Development Journal, the Eugene Register Guard, and online with Thrive Global, Rebel Society, psychotherapy.net, Highly Sensitive Refuge, Introvert Dear, and the Sang Library just recently. Paula, so thank you so much for being with us tonight. Your topic is Understanding Your Rainforest Mind, Guidance for Gifted Adults. And thanks again for being here, and I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. Whoops. Uh-oh. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I can't see the chat, so I'm not going to know what you're thinking as you're chatting, but feel free to add some things into the chat. Mark will be looking at it and giving me feedback later when we have time in the end for questions. Okay, so this is a list of my background, and Mark mentioned a lot of it. I've been a tag teacher. I was a teacher before I became a therapist, so I worked with gifted kids, grades 1 through 8, and then did some teacher training and summer programs for gifted kids. So I worked a lot with the kids, but when I was 39, I went back to school and got a counseling degree, and then started my counseling practice and figured, that I had worked with gifted kids for so long, and I knew that they had particular issues that maybe therapists who didn't understand giftedness wouldn't understand. And so I started to specialize in working with gifted clients, and then I moved into adults more than working with kids. And so that's some of my background. I started a blog not all that long ago in 2014, and it just exploded into getting more known and writing books, and so I will just share with you. You may know my books. The first one, the one on the left, is the in-depth book about gifted adults. Through case studies of clients of mine, and there are lots of resources in it that are related to the different topics, the different issues that gifted adults deal with. The one on the right is my blog. It's the first 4 years of blog posts that are the most popular. People requested to have them in a book rather than have to dig through the blog to find them. So that's what the Journey book is about. And ta-da! Most recently, I published Saving Your Rainforest Mind, a guided journal, because I wanted, gifted folks to have a place to really dive into understanding themselves. There's the information, and then there's the work you do on yourself. And I have been a journal writer since I was 19, actually, a long time ago. And journals are so powerful and so important, and you can do a whole lot of inner work yourself through your journal. And so that's the latest book, and it's really exciting to have it out there. And so today, I know I have just about 30 minutes, and so I'm going to move through the information fairly quickly, but this is the agenda. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why the Rainforest Mind, give some examples from clients, give you some strategies and resources. And in the end, we will have questions. But just so you know, if I don't get to your questions or you don't ask them during the session, but you want to contact me, feel free to contact me at paula@rainforestmind.com. Okay. So let me see. We shall begin. I came up with the Rainforest Mind analogy back when I was teaching, and I was working with gifted middle schoolers. And a lot of teachers were very resistant to, I was pulling them out of their classes. And, the definition of gifted is, it's kind of, there's so many people defining it in so many different ways. And I wanted an analogy that I could use to help the teachers understand who these kids were. So I thought, I had this moment of, a brilliant idea. I thought, people as ecosystems, some people are like deserts, some people are like meadows, and some people are like rainforests, and so on. And each ecosystem is beautiful and valuable and important. And no ecosystem is better than any other, but the rainforest ecosystem is just the most complex. And that's like our kids and our gifted adults. And they are, they're colorful, they're intense, they're full of resources and alive and lively. And, when you think of walking into the jungle, there's so much going on. And as compared to a meadow, and so the rainforest analogy seems to work for a lot of people who are not comfortable with the word gifted, with the label gifted. And I have so many people telling me, actually, when they contact me, I'm not gifted, but I think I have a rainforest mind. So, okay. And I know it's not, the rainforest analogy doesn't fit for everyone, because these are creative people. These are people with multipotentiality. And not every gifted person has all of that, or even the high sensitivity and empathy. But so this is kind of like a type of gifted, really. It's not everyone, but every rainforest-minded person is a gifted person. So I'm going to introduce you to a client who I'm calling Jude. And what I have done is create a compiled monologue that from many of my clients, things many of my clients have said, and also things that have been written by people who read my blog. The comments on my blog are often, sometimes they're not that interesting, but sometimes they're just, the people are writing these just beautiful things, describing their struggles and who they are. And so I put all that into this monologue, and I'm going to read it to you. And it takes about, 3 or 4 minutes. And what I want you to do is listen to it, maybe even close your eyes and hear it, and see if these are things that you have said, or your students have said, or your children have said. And because it really covers the range of issues that the gifted people struggle with. Okay, so here we go. Here's Jude. First of all, just so you know, I'm not gifted. I don't even like the word. What does it mean anyway? Isn't everyone gifted in some way? The truth is, it never really did me any good to be labeled gifted when I was a kid. I was labeled when I was a kid, yeah, but they tested me for the gifted program in school, but I just got bullied. And I spent a lot of time waiting for the other kids to catch up, waiting for the teacher to teach something I didn't know, waiting to find a friend who would keep up with me, who would understand me. I'm still waiting for that friend, but I'm not gifted. I didn't get great grades in school. I wasn't the valedictorian. I even started failing classes in high school. Sure, I got good test scores, but the tests were easy. Don't gifted people get all A's all the time? I didn't always get all A's. Really, I'm not gifted. I haven't won the Nobel Prize. I haven't won any prize. Okay, well, maybe there was the spelling bee in 3rd grade. Does that count? I'm just a regular person. True, they called me a geek, a nerd, a show-off, and a know-it-all, but I don't know it all. Far from it. I would love to know it all, but that's impossible. I'd love to know it all. I want to learn everything about everything. I've got all of this unbridled enthusiasm about learning stuff. People find it very annoying, Why can't I just be satisfied with a good football game or binge watching The Bachelor on TV? But I'm not gifted. I worry all the time. Am I saying the right thing, doing the right thing? I can't sleep at night because there's so much rumination, so many thoughts in so many different directions. I can't turn off my brain. Surely if I were smart, I'd be able to stop worrying and figure things out. I'd be able to meditate easily and find enlightenment. But no, there's so much thinking. They called me an overthinker when I was 5, and I'm still overthinking. Look, I'm not gifted. I can't make decisions. There are so many variables and variables within variables. I can't even decide what color to paint the living room. I painted it 12 times in the past 4 years, and it still isn't right. And well, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I'm overwhelmed by the number of interests I have. I changed majors 4 times in college, and it took 7 years to graduate. Don't gifted people know what they know and take clear, confident action? Aren't they all prodigies and have a clear direction from the time they're born? Well, not me. Look, I'm just not gifted. I tend to go from job to job, still trying to find my path. I learn a job in about 2 years, and then I get bored and I want to try something new. I have a resume that's all over the place. Coworkers aren't very fond of me either. I get frustrated at meetings when I'm waiting them to figure out what I told them at the beginning of the meeting or 2 months ago. I'm not patient or a good team player. Other people are so lazy or they don't listen to me. I get irritated easily. That's not very gifted, if you ask me. I'm telling you, I am not gifted. Anyway, it's too much responsibility. I mean, if I were gifted, wouldn't I have to change the world? I'm just a mom raising a kid who is still throwing tantrums, and she's 8 years old. She's so sensitive, so emotional. See, I'm failing. I'm a failing parent at that. I'm so not gifted. Really, truly, I'm not gifted. I just have very high standards and expectations and think everyone ought to live up to them. No biggie. It's important to keep raising that bar. Don't you think? I mean, how else will civilization evolve? Of course, yeah, all right. I shouldn't take an hour to write a 3-sentence email. Sure, that might be a teensy-weensy excessive, but still, standards, morals, ethics, expectations. I can't lower my standards. Okay, I know I may sound a little intense. People say I talk too fast, but I'm actually cranking back my intensity right now, and I'm not talking as quickly as I'm thinking, just so you know. But even though I'm not gifted, I may fit some of the characteristics of the rainforest mind. I can relate to that analogy. My brain does feel like a jungle. I'm complicated, sensitive, colorful, maybe creative, overwhelming for sure, dense, green. And I've definitely run into chainsaws in my life. People have clearly wanted me to be cut down and turned into something I'm not. That's for certain. Sad, but true. Not that I'm complaining. I mean, I'm grateful for this life and for what I've got. Very grateful. It's just that sometimes those chainsaws, sometimes they're just too much. And if I were gifted, which I'm not, but if I were, I'd want to send the gift back to the manufacturer for a refund, unwrap the gift, send it back. Yeah. But I'm not gifted. So that is Jude, and I wish I could see you and we could talk about it, because I know it often brings up feelings and emotion. And if you're having some emotion right now, of course you are. You may be relating to many of these things that Jude has shared, and so I'm giving you all a big hug right now, because this is the challenge. This is what gifted adults are dealing with. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly go through some of these particular things that were said in the monologue and give you some strategies and some resources. So I'm not crazy, but I'm gifted. All right. So one of the things that you may be experiencing are these sensitivities, empathy, and intuition. Every client I have is dealing with all of that. In deep intuition, deep sensitivity, lots of feelings, lots of emotion. And it's hard in these times right now with, I mean, just so much suffering on the planet right now. And you're a highly sensitive person, you have a lot of empathy, you're feeling it probably. And so you need some strategies to help. And here's some of them. I'm not going to read them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will mention a couple that stand out. So which ones do I want to? All right, I'm going to mention this one. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. All right, because that's a different one that you may not have heard about from other people. So the challenge when you're gifted is you're capable of many things. And you can want to help. But you've got to figure out how to set some boundaries and how to say no some of the time, because you can do, you could do it faster than this other person. You could help them and you could get it done and you could do it better. But if you said yes to all of those things that you can do, you wouldn't survive. You would be burnt out. And so you really need to learn how to say no more often and give yourself permission to do that. Give yourself permission to set boundaries. And then, there are many things online that you can find about how to calm your nervous system, but you have a very active, engaged nervous system. There are some apps now that you can use to calm your nervous system. You can even, I get acupuncture. I have a great acupuncturist, and, you might find practitioners who can help you with just taking care of your body. Okay, so that's some of the sensitivity, and as I'm moving through this fairly quickly, I'm sure you know that we could spend a lot of time on each of these areas. So just so you know. The next thing, I want to know it all. I want to know everything about everything. This is so common in everybody I know, every gifted client that I know is dealing with that too. All right, so what that means is you can be very lonely. You can have difficulty finding people who see you, who connect with you, who understand you, who want to know you. And so I have some resources here. Some of these are just about relationships. Esther Perel is like the queen of relationships, particularly partnerships. She's a great resource. Alain Duboton has just very funny videos, speeches on relationships. He's with the School of Life, and he's a great resource about relationships. If you're lonely, the thing that I tell my clients is, first of all, it's hard to find other gifted people, but they find me. So so they're out there. They are there. And so one idea is to figure out what it is you love to do and look for the gifted people there. Do what you love. Find those hobbies, make time for yourself, and use your intuition to see where are the gifted people. And then be brave and introduce yourself and ask them for coffee or tea or take a walk. And that's how you start to find gifted people. If you have heard me talk before, you know that I dance the Argentine tango. And there are many tango groups in different communities all over the world. Now that the COVID is kind of reduced, those groups are starting up again. And if you don't like the tango, there are other dances. But the thing about the tango is it's complicated and it requires sensitivity and empathy and capacity to tune in to your body and to your partner and to the music, and gifted people are attracted to it. This group in Eugene is just amazing. When I first started, I didn't expect it. And I was surprised. This guy I took lessons from just recently, he said he was a math prodigy. I was like, oh, I had no idea. And so the thing that is interesting about it, some of the people who learn to lead will talk about how finally they're being followed. They can't be followed when they're talking intellectually, but in the dance, people follow them, and it's so rewarding to be able to be followed. So that's another Argentine tango story. And if you have kids and they're musical and they like to dance, get them into dance lessons and dance classes. It's really a great way to find people and meet people. All right. So then I probably shouldn't take an hour to write a 3-sentence email. So that brings us to perfectionism. And what I have seen in my clients is 2 types. And I call them intrinsic and extrinsic. There's also healthy and unhealthy. Sometimes people don't want to call the healthy perfectionism. So maybe there's another word for it. But the way I describe it is the deep need, I'm going to take a drink, for beauty, balance, precision, justice, and harmony. So think about that, right? So I'm not going to be perfect right now because my voice. Okay, hold on. That's great. I'm talking about perfectionism and I'm losing my voice. So think about this is what I've seen in my clients. There's this drive for perfection, for all of these things. Let's see, for, when you write an essay, when you play music, when you make a pie, I mean, there's this just drive to make it beautiful or harmonious. And anyway, there are lots of examples of, I'm sure you can think of, does this happen for you? And I guess what I want to tell you is it's something that you don't have to heal or repair or get rid of. Sometimes you do need to prioritize what you're doing and tell yourself that some things are not worth being beautiful. Some things, like I have a client who's in a college, and I said to her, which assignments do you want to really do beautifully, and which can you just sort of get done? And we value that striving for excellence and perfection, but it doesn't have to be everywhere in everything. Okay. And then there is the what I call unhealthy or extrinsic perfectionism. And that's when you are afraid of making mistake, when, mistakes feel like failures. And many of my gifted clients are dealing with that as well. And that can come from the pressure to be smart. When our gifted kids are young, well-intentioned adults may talk to them about how smart they are over and over again, or may really respond to the fact that they're getting A's or they're 100% or they won the game. And putting a lot of pressure on that makes the child feel like they're valued because they're smart. They're valued because of their achievements, and their achievement gets meshed in with their identity. And so as parents, you really want to be careful about that and not emphasize the winning and the 100% and let go of that expression, you're so smart. And because that can set up that need to be perfect, need to always achieve. And so that's the source of the unhealthy perfectionism. So that what I've noticed with clients is that's a real hard one to change. It goes deep. Often we have to sort of go into childhood trauma issues and that sort of thing. But one technique that you can use is you can have a journal, build a journal relationship with the critic part of yourself. You have, if you're dealing with this, you have an inner critic. Can you start a dialogue and find out who is the inner critic and what do they look like? How do they sound? You can even, the creative part of you can draw the inner critic and then build a relationship with it. And you can start to help the inner critic kind of calm down. There are, speaking of journaling, in my journal book, there are some exercises on not only actually talking to your inner critic, but also redefining failure. Failure is not necessarily failure. What you think of as making a mistake or a failure may not actually be a failure. So those are some ideas. And as I tell people, your memoir is going to be much more interesting when you write about your failures. I mean, who wants to read about your successes, right? So people's, the TED Talks, the memoirs, we want to hear about where you've messed up and how you got out of it and how you survived it. So that is perfectionism. And I know, again, I could do a whole presentation on perfectionism for sure. So don't gifted people get A's all the time. I didn't always get A's. Imposter syndrome. Now let me see if I can find my notes in imposter syndrome. Here we go. So that's a common one. I hear about that all the time. Many gifted adults experience imposter syndrome, and partly it's because of the the myths about what giftedness is. You feel like an imposter because you don't get all A's or you haven't won any prizes, and so you can't be gifted. And I do have a list here of, sort of like reasons why you might feel like an imposter, because part of it is you're not supposed to be smarter or better than anyone. You have a strong sense of justice. And so, it's uncomfortable to feel like you're gifted. Sometimes you fear success. I have a client recently who's talking about that. And sometimes if you're gifted, you feel like you have to be gifted all the time, and that's too much pressure. People tell you that you're so smart, but you feel like you're just lucky. You feel like the tests were easy. The teacher liked you. These are all reasons why you can convince yourself that you're not gifted. And then there's also that feeling of like, how can you take credit for being smart because you didn't work hard? So there's a lot around, a lot of you might be experiencing in this whole imposter syndrome because you don't really understand the nature of what giftedness looks like. So decision making. Some of you may have trouble making decisions. There are so many variables within the variables within the variables, and you have a social conscience, and so you know how much your decisions are going to affect the planet, and so you want to be careful. So so decision making, and I put that with multipotentiality. Again, it's an issue that, that people think, well, you're so smart, why do you have these problems? But, it's because you can think of so many possibilities that decision-making is difficult. So here are some strategies. This book, How to Be Everything, Emily Wapnick, she created the Puttyverse. If you're really dealing with multipotentiality, that is the resource for you. Building a connection to your intuition so that especially for big decisions, you have somewhere to go inside yourself where you might get a sense of how to choose, how to decide, because of, you're coming from your intuition rather than just coming from your logic. Giving yourself permission to change careers. Also, grieving for the choices that you didn't make. I mean, this is something that we don't really talk about, but, there are going to be things that you can't do. You can't, there's only a limited lifespan. And so you may have to feel sad. You may have to grieve for things that you won't get to. But I like to tell people that it's never too late to do so many things. I mean, I hate to tell my age, but I started my blog when I was 62. So the first book I wrote when I was 64. So that kind of gives you a sense of how old I am. And so you don't, so if you're 40, it's not over, you may feel that way. If you're 50, you may feel like, oh, it's too late. It's not too late. Okay. It's never too late. All right. Overthinking. This is really an important one because people don't talk about this too much, but, a lot of gifted people call themselves overthinkers, think they're overthinkers, and maybe you are, but one idea is that it's not overthinking. It's just you being gifted. You just think a lot about many things. And if you're creative, you really think a lot. You have lots of ideas. And so don't necessarily say it's overthinking if that's what it is. And you'll just need, to deal with that. You need more intellectual and creative stimulation. That I find that, I got gifted people who almost feel depressed, and it's they don't have enough stimulation. It's not necessarily that there's something terribly wrong, but they need intellectual and creative stimulation. Okay, and here's some ways to get that, and then to decide if the thing you're calling overthinking is really rumination, is really worry, because that is another thing that gifted people can do. Because they think of so many things, they can catastrophize. They can think of so many things that could go wrong. So if it's ruminating, then you need to do these other things. Then you need to, use a calming app. If you need help sleeping, there's a sleep stories app. Exercise helps some people. If it's really deep worry, you might need therapy. Even if you're a certain age, or you might need to look at your hormone balances. Spend time in nature. Do what calms your nervous system, and know that it can be part of being gifted, this rumination. All right. And then we have, I've been diagnosed ADHD, OCD, bipolar. No one has diagnosed me with a gifted disorder. So I am not an expert in 2E, twice exceptionality. And there are more and more people, some of them on this list, that are. So those are the people you go to if you're dealing with twice exceptionality. What I would say is that sometimes gifted people are misdiagnosed with some of these because some of their traits look like even autism, or they look like ADHD, or they look like even bipolar disorder sometimes because of being emotional. So these are the resources that I would recommend if you need to know more about twice exceptionality, or if you need to see if you might have been misdiagnosed. If I were gifted, wouldn't I have to change the world? Okay, so I'm noticing the time. Okay, I'll just go a little longer. I just have a couple more slides. So, but this is so important, the social responsibility aspect of being gifted. I just find that in most of my clients, the need that, and there's so much happening with the climate crisis right now, the political situation in the United States, the struggles around the world. I mean, I just, you know what they are. So, so you may be, you have the empathy. You may be really struggling right now with what to do. So I recently found this book, Not Too Late, about climate, which is very good. I would suggest you look at these different climate organizations and maybe join one or get involved in one. And then there are some resources here on racism, and the Van Jones is a great resource for so many different things, but equality, diversity, racism, that kind of thing. And so just if you are feeling extra stress because of the times right now, know that that's part of being gifted. And there are some things you can do. And there are so many resources now online, so many organizations that you can join. There are some answers. There's some good news out there. Okay. I talk to trees and they talk back to me. You may have some spiritual inclinations. You are probably creative. So here are some resources for that. And the spirituality, the same connection to nature, can be one way to deal with so many things, to deal with social responsibility, to deal with anxiety. Creating a spiritual practice can often be very helpful. And some of these organizations are useful. I'm part of this thing called Evolutionary Collective, which is kind of an amazing spiritual community. And there's a book called Evolutionary Relationships by the woman who started it, Patricia Albert. You could look it up online. It's a pretty exciting view of the future and view of what's possible. And there's so much more I could say, but I'm going to start to wrap it up. I'm not going to talk about parenting, but I just, wanted you to know that this is also, a reason why you need to really understand your own giftedness and take care of yourself. These are a couple of books that I recommend that are about parenting and education. You may know this is a recent book by Gail Post. She's a wonderful psychologist in Pennsylvania, the book on the left. And then Tom Kleins wrote this great book a few years ago about a particularly profoundly gifted boy. And it talks a lot about this parent struggles with the education. And it's really a great read. So those are the books I would recommend for that. And then, okay, so then I just wanted to, I get these beautiful comments on my blog. And I just wanted to share this one because it just speaks to this gifted mind. And this young man writes on my blog a lot. And he said, the ideas in my mind palace sit there, gathering dust on easels and drafting tables. in long corridors lined with the mahogany cabinets of imagination, abandoned for fear that they are too much, that I am too much, that if the world saw inside, it would rightly conclude I was an alien and fire me into space. This still gets me emotional. It's just such a great example of the struggle that gifted adults have. And I will leave you with this quote, which is from Bill Plotkin, who's written a lot of books about nature and the natural world and our connection to nature. And I'll read it to you. We stand on the threshold of a great unknown. Individually and collectively, we launch into an uncertain future, at once both perilous and saturated with possibility. Our accustomed, culturally determined roles and identities are inadequate to navigate the sea change of our time. Our collective journey requires a radical shift in the human relationship with the community of all life, a cultural transformation so profound that future humans might regard it as an evolution of consciousness. Safe passage requires each of us to offer our full magnificence to the world. So that's my message to you. It's important that you take care of yourself, that you understand who you are, and figure out how you're magnificent and share your magnificence with the world. Okay, that's the end. Here are some resources that I suggest to my clients. I think that's the last. Okay, there we go. So the end. Hi, Mark. Nice to see you.
Can you go back 2 slides again and say, I want to see that again, that safe passage requires
each of us to offer our full magnificence to the world.
I love that. Safe passage. Yeah, I've not heard it that way.
Yeah.
And you know, so that leads me to one of the questions, and the question that you were talking about, building a relationship with your inner critic.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I see that maybe as a voice. Like in my head, it's a voice and it's me, but it's not necessarily me.
Mm-hmm.
It's some version of me. And I find that a really interesting idea. So, like, ideally, what would building that relationship do for a person who is highly perfectionist?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where would it take you?
Right. It creates this, what do I want to say? It builds a relationship so that the critical part of you feels less powerful. It's like, it's not, like some people think it when they feel it, it's all of who they are. It's how they define themselves. I'm so critical. I'm such a perfectionist, and it just takes over. And if you see it as a part of you and you talk to it, it right away loses some of its power, and it tells you why it's there. And often it says, I'm just here to protect you. I don't want you to be embarrassed. So I'm going to shut you down, or I'm going to be really picky and obnoxious, but I'm just here to take care of you and protect you. And so you go, oh, well, you know what? You don't need to protect me so much. I can, like, what else? Could I give you another job? So you build a connection with it, and it can over time quiet it down a little bit, calm it down. And if it doesn't, it's like, if it's just really powerful, then you might want to look at what else is going on. What else is the source of some of that self-criticism?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that really makes sense to me. It hits home too. It's like, and I'm trying to take care of you. I'm trying to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you don't feel like a fool, maybe.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing any generational trends? Like, are your clients' tendencies moving towards some direction that's obvious to you, and as they come, the new ones come?
I don't know what you mean. What do you mean?
Well, like generational trends of like anxiety is that so much, is it greater than it used to be, or clients coming with the same sort of concerns that they've always come with, or are you seeing something that's standing out about about the newer, younger clients, for example?
Yeah, sure. Yes, yes. I think it's so interesting. I think in general, these issues are the issues I've been talking about for a long time. So anxiety and sensitivity and social responsibility, those are themes that are common, but absolutely, these are harder times. I mean, the climate issue has been coming for years, but it's like in our face now. Mm-hmm. And so, there's much more stress, there's much more anxiety. And then this, social media, the phone, right? The technology creates just a whole new set of challenges for parents and for kids. Now, I haven't worked with kids in a long time. I work with their parents. So I hear from the parents, or I work with the individual adults who don't necessarily have kids. But everyone is I think there's just like higher anxiety and higher depression, existential depression. What's the point? Why am I here? It's all going to end. I mean, yeah. So you might say it's all turned up higher.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's gone up to 11. This one goes to 11.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that bring clients to you that first time? Like what makes someone make that appointment? What makes someone walk through the door who's a gifted individual seeking counseling? I know there's probably a variety of answers. So what are some of the things that bring people to you?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I have my counseling practice, which is in Oregon. Counselors are licensed only in their particular state. So I just really see clients as a counselor in Oregon, but then I have consulting clients all over the world. So the counseling clients often come, kind of like for the reasons that a lot of people come to therapy, because they're struggling with anxiety or depression, or their relationship is falling apart, or basically they have trauma from childhood that, their family of origin was very dysfunctional. And so they had an abusive mother. And so, and their life isn't working very well now. They're anxious all the time, or their colleagues and their jobs are kind of, I had one today. It's like, she's triggered by her colleagues on the job because they're just like her mother, so she needs to deal with her mother issues so that those things won't happen the way they're happening now. And that's a quick answer to that. But so the gifted people kind of come for the reasons that people come to therapy, really. But then they have this other layer of being gifted, which we work on and I talk about. And I say, we talk about trauma, and then we talk about giftedness, and what are those differences, and what is an issue because of you were a gifted child in school and you were bullied and scapegoated, and what's the issue because you had an abusive parent. And so that's the counseling stuff. With the consulting, as a consultant, I don't go into the trauma and the family material. So people come to me for that because a lot of times they just want validation. They just kind of think they don't feel gifted. They don't think they're gifted, but they're drawn to what I'm writing, and they go, oh, but that fits me. Oh, that, So they talk to me for an hour, like straight, I don't hardly say anything. It's like, they talk to me for an hour and it's kind of like, so what do you think? Am I gifted? And it's like, oh my God, you're so gifted. It's like, I love it. I just love what I do. But it's like, I'm laughing because it's kind of funny, because it's like, they are so classically gifted, but they don't know it. And they have these struggles and they need somebody to really validate it for them and give them some strategies and some ways to find friends and some ways to live in this crazy world, and they, we all need support. We all need somebody who gets us and sees us. The other thing is they can say whatever they want to me and not worry about being judged, right? They don't worry that I'm going to say, oh, you're too much, or you really need to tone it down, or you're not so smart, or, all that junk that people say to gifted people. So does that answer your question?
It does beautifully. I mean, that's a perfect place to just to stop. It just and I work with gifted children, and oftentimes I'm saying is just that what can we give them? The most important thing we can give them is validation and a place that they can be who they are, and just be them, and just be right. And at that safe place, just like this safe passage is not possible if there's not a safe place involved, right? You have to have that safe place for that safe passage.
Right. And it's hard to find it. It's hard to find it. So it's like a real blessing when there's somebody who gets you and sees you and encourages you to be yourself. Yeah.
And you can come and just talk to Paula for an hour without stopping and end up validating yourself in the process somehow, right? They talk around and they go in a circle, and you just need to be that person nodding your head and saying, yeah.
And I love it. And I love you for who you are. I love that about you, right? Yeah.
It's a perfect place for us to stop it tonight. So thank you so much. Those of you out there, thanks for joining us. You got to take a look at Paula's work. I know you can find some things published online and blogs, but those books are special. And I had so many people excited to hear you, and I'm glad that you got to join us for Conversations with CAGT and that you agreed to do it. We're honored to have you. Everybody out there, you can see the archive. It's now 3 years of Conversations with CAGT. We started in 2020. The lockdown brought us to these conversations for the first time, and we've archived them all at coloradogifted.org. And it's under the resources tab, and you can see all 3 seasons. We're starting season 4. Paula's recording will be there in a week or so. You'll start to see it appear. And then in 2 weeks, on September 19th, we'll be back with another conversation. And I just want to say thank you one more time, Paula, and just that's all I can say. Thank you for giving us a little bit of a safe passage tonight.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.